This is 6.5, completing the square, due for Thursday. This first slide is probably a little bit confusing, mostly because completing the square is kind of confusing unless you actually see a real example. Either way, you may want to go ahead and pause, write it down. Okay, and let's go over this then. So the basic idea here is we're taking something that's written in standard form and making it look more like it's in vertex form. That's useful for a couple different reasons, but you know, it's just a process that we're learning here. So we're starting with something here that's in standard form. For now, we're only going to be doing completing the square where it's just regular old x squared. It'll be 1x squared, not 2x squared or 3x squared or anything else like that, because it's done a tiny bit differently. But a couple most important things here is you're going to cut that b term in half, and then you're going to rewrite it like you see right here, inside the parentheses, and you're going to square that. So that means that this x squared, I don't write the squared on the x anymore. I just write regular old x here. I put the squared outside the parentheses, and whatever b is, I cut that in half and I put it right here. And if the b was positive, this is a plus sign. If the b was negative, this is a minus sign. And then of course the plus c is still there. Now, what we just did there is kind of technically illegal. We've changed this problem in a way that's no longer the same as it was previously. So in order to compensate for this, in order to correct this, we have to subtract an amount. We have to subtract that b term that's been cut in half, that b over 2, we have to subtract that much squared, which is what this next part says. Again, and this is kind of confusing because you're not looking at numbers. If you're looking at numbers, you could actually say, oh, I subtract 2 squared or whatever, and that's a lot easier to see. So for now, again, just write it down, and when we see the examples, it'll make a bit more sense. So you've rewritten this first part here, which I'll highlight pink. You've rewritten this, and because of this pink part, we have to compensate by subtracting this yellow part. And it's always subtract, no matter what. You always subtract that b over 2 squared. And then once you've done that, then you just start simplifying things up and you solve. And in the process of solving, you're going to do a square root. And really, that part alone just needs to be seen and worked out in an example. So that's what we're going to do now. So, solving this example, first of all, we need to see the b here is 2. So when we cut that in half, b over 2 cut in half would be 2 over 2, or just 1. So whenever I go to rewrite this thing, it's going to be 0 equals, inside the parentheses, it's no longer x squared, it'll be x, because the squared is going to be up here, but b over 2 is 1, and we keep this same sign. That right there, pause, rewind, whatever you need to do. That's the part we really need to see and understand so far, is I cut this in half and put it in the parentheses like that. I still have the minus 24, but now, to compensate, because of rewriting it like this, which is kind of illegal, I have to make up for it by subtracting this much that I see right here squared. So this plus 1 squared is 1, so I have to subtract 1 from this equation right there. And as long as you understand that part of it, then you really understand the whole setup of completing the square. Everything that happens now is just regular old solving techniques. So what we're going to do then is, let's combine this together, negative 24 and negative 1 combine together to make negative 25. So we've got 0 equals x plus 1 squared minus 25. And then I want to move the 25 to the other side, so I'm going to add 25. Add 25. 0 plus 25 is 25, equals x plus 1 squared. That canceled. Now, to get rid of a squared, just like getting rid of addition, you subtract. Getting rid of multiplication, you divide. Getting rid of squared, you do the opposite operation, which is you square root both sides. So I'm going to square root both sides, and that'll cancel just the squared on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, the square root of 25 is, yeah, I know it's 5, but technically speaking, it could also be negative 5. So we have to write this plus or minus symbol. And yes, you do have to write the plus or minus symbol when you square root your numbers while completing the square and solving. So I have plus or minus 5 now equals just x plus 1. I don't need the parentheses anymore because I got rid of the squared. So we freed all that up. And now to solve for x, again, I don't care about the plus or minus 5 right now because I look at the x. I have x plus 1. Just get rid of the plus 1, I have to subtract 1 from both sides. But here's the thing, I can't subtract 1 from 5 because it's not 5, it's plus or minus 5. So the way you write that is like this. X equals, I'm going to start with the regular number here, the negative 1, and then I'm going to write that plus or minus sign, and then the 5. So x equals negative 1 plus or minus 5. Okay, you see I just organized this right here together like this over here. Well, I can actually evaluate that because I can do negative 1 plus 5 and I can do negative 1 minus 5 and see what those answers are. Negative 1 plus 5 is 4. Negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. So then my actual figured out exact answers are 4 and negative 6. One more example. So once again, most important part to start with is take the b term and cut it in half. Half of 14 is 7. So I've got 0 equals x minus 7 squared. Again, the squared has moved to the outside of the parentheses. This sign is the same. I cut the 14 in half to make that a 7, and then bring down this other part. Oops, plus 48. Now, since this has changed the problem, I still have to subtract, always subtract, this number squared. How much is 7 squared? 49. So I have to subtract 49. 48 minus 49 is negative 1. So I've got 0 equals x minus 7 squared minus 1. Move the 1 to the other side. 1 equals x minus 7 squared. Square root both sides. Okay, square root of 1 is 1, but remember I have to write it as plus or minus 1 equals just the x minus 7. Now I can add the 7 to the other side, which I would write that as x equals, so that would see positive 7, then the plus or minus 1. Now I need to figure out what both of those things are. 7 plus 1 is 8, so x equals 8, and 7 minus 1 is 6, so x equals 6, and those are my solutions. If I were to help you summarize this, I would really focus on cutting the b term in half, writing it in the parentheses like this, and always subtracting this number inside the parentheses squared. And then of course you just go on and you simplify and you solve that. Please go back, rewatch some of this. You might understand that first slide better now that you've seen the examples. But certainly come to class with questions if you didn't understand something.